My name is Hasan, and I'm iOS engineer at STRV. And today we are going to talk about the live activities, and we will have a quick trip to the dynamic island, which is like introduced recently. And yeah, our agenda will be some introduction about what is live activity and what is dynamic island and how they actually work. And then we will implement the live activity, which our case will be a pizza delivery. And later we will go for the struggles that we actually might face with the implementation of the live activity and the best practices. So I will ask you two questions. First of all, how many of you are iOS developers or iPhone users? Okay, great. 1, 2, I think 10 maybe. So probably you have seen recently these kind of views in the new iOS, right? Okay, so I think you are familiar with what is live activities. Or if you have iPhone 14 Pro, actually you can have these kind of views as well in the notch, in the new notch, which is called Dynamic Island. So for the ones that doesn't know what is Dynamic Island, it's basically these beautiful new hole in the iPhones, and it's not like the previous ugly notch that we had on iPhones, and it's actually interactive. So you basically can touch it, you can play with it, and that's why actually Apple called it Dynamic Island. So, and what is actually live activities? So iOS developers or iPhone users probably know that once you kill the app or terminate the app, you probably don't have any access to it anymore. So you don't get any updates from the app or any view or something. You cannot see it in the home screen or lock screen or something like that. So Apple actually introduced live activities. So you basically can have a short view of your app outside your app itself. So you can see such a view, in this case in the lock screen, and it basically has two presentations, one in the lock screen and one in the dynamic island. And the use cases actually for this live activities, as I showed you, for example, you take Uber and you close the app. You don't want to open the app and see where is the driver, and instead of unlock your iPhone and open the app and see where is the driver, you can just see it in your lock screen. So again, basically you have a short view of your app outside your app. And it's actually introduced in iOS 16, but it's released in iOS 16.1. And along with that, Apple introduced the Activity Kit, which actually work with the life cycle of this live activities. So basically how it works, as I mentioned before, you have two kind of presentations for the live activities. The one that you have in the lock screen, and for the iPhones that doesn't have the dynamic island, which are the iPhone 14 Pro and below, you have it on the lock screen, and as a notification you can see in the home screen as well. And for the iPhone 14 Pro, the series, of course you can see the live activity in the lock screen, but also in the dynamic island, as I mentioned. And when I said it's interactive, it's basically, you can see the red border. It's the physical notch, but it's actually interactive. It gets expanded and gets smaller as well, based on the data which is showed on this dynamic island. So we have, for the dynamic island, we have three types of presentation for these live activities. The first one is compact mode, the one in the top, and the second one is the minimal mode, or when you touch and hold on dynamic island on that beautiful notch, it actually gets expanded and you can see like more data, and that notch actually gets bigger and you can see data there. And one note that in order to have these live activities, you basically need to have or implement all these presentations like implemented for the app. So you need to have the view for the lock screen, you need to have the view for these three different dynamic island views. And of course, since it's Apple, and Apple doesn't leave us without any limits and constraints, so the first constraint, which actually may be a bit tricky or not really good, is that we don't have any access network there. But I will get to that how we actually can update it. And the second thing is that it can be active for up to 8 hours for the dynamic island and up to 12 hours in the lock screen. But also like the normal notifications, which like user can dismiss it or clear it, the user can also like clear it or just close the dynamic island as well. So it's not like mandatory for the user that you need to, for example, see this dynamic island. It can be like dismissed. And the last constraint here is the location update. So we don't have access to the location and the GPS, so we cannot like show, use the location service and show some location in the dynamic island or in the live activity itself. So let's go to Beat. And as I mentioned, our example and use case here will be pizza delivery. And this is actually the difference between the live activity and the widgets that we had before for the iPhone. So, it's like a temporary live update for your app. So before we had the widgets, which wasn't that live, but it was alive in the home screen. But in the live activity, it is live. And I already wrote the code. I'm not gonna like write any code here, but I'm gonna show you the steps how to set up the live activity and what code needs to be written and be used to have the dynamic island at the live activity. So actually the code that describes the user interface of the live activity is part of the widget that I mentioned. And so in order to have this thing in the widget, we need to add the widget extension, which is another target in our project. So we have, in iOS, we have the main target, or maybe we have like some other modules, whatever we want. But to be able to set up the live activities, we basically need to add the widget extension. And after that, we need to add in the info plist file, we need to add the NS support live activities. So the app knows that we are using the live activities. And after that, we need to define our attributes, which is used in the live activities, which actually, we need to define the activity attributes, a struct or a type. And this actually acts as our model in the app. And after that, we need to define the views, how it should look, and how it's gonna be. And yeah, we can start the live activity, update it, and end it, or whatever. So first of all, as I mentioned, after we add the extension and this stuff, we go directly to the attributes, which, as I mentioned, it acts like a model for us. So we are going to implement these view, which has like the number of the item here and the delivery time, and the actually total amount of the order, and we can see actually the order status. But here we actually need to define the dynamic properties or the statics one. So for the dynamics one, which actually changed, like the order status, for example, is the order is placed, order is delivering, order is like arrived or whatever. We need to have it like in the content state type, which should conform with the codable. And the other static properties can be like outside that, which actually the values doesn't change, is not changing during this process. So after we define this, we go for the presentation, how this should look. And as you can see, we need to define the activity widget here, which is actually conform to the widget protocol. And then here we have the configuration, as I mentioned. And for the live activity, which is going to be shown in the lock screen, we need to create the view or the presentation in this block. And for the dynamic island, as you can see, it has its own field and block. So it's a normal closure in Swift UI, and you can define your UI here. So here is the fun thing and maybe interesting. Maybe you ask that, okay, we have this physical hole or whatever, and how are we going to implement our view here? So Apple basically, first of all, let me start with the simple one. So as I mentioned before, we had the compact one, we had the minimal one, we had the expanded one. For the compact one, we have leading side and we have trailing side. We can define like easily our views and put it there. And for the minimal one, we have this small hole or this, which is again easy. But when it comes to this one, we have this limitation. And Apple actually here came and separated the view to leading, center, trailing, and bottom. So basically, we need to define for each part of this, or for each region, we need to define the views here. And the good thing actually here is that it's very customizable in a way that you can even omit some of these areas. So for example, you can prioritize the leading side, and we have this the type here. You can prioritize it and tell to this dynamic island that I don't want the center and the bottom. So it will consider the leading part as this area that you can see here. And the rest, you can, for example, use it as a trailing. It depends, of course, on your case. How are you going to manage it? But it's very customizable. I know, and I was like so surprised that how actually they managed to do that. And one also other thing, maybe you ask that, okay, maybe in the leading part, we have a label, for example, here, which we don't know the size of the label. It can be, I don't know, this much or, smaller. So again, there is the modifier in Swift UI for dynamic island, which you can use, and which actually says to dynamic island that, okay, if this label is, conflicting with this physical area, you can actually put the label under the dynamic island. So, it's very dynamic, and you can play with it to design your dynamic island. And as I mentioned, which live activity is part of widget bundle. So we need to initialize what we have written here for the presentation of the live activity. And back to the main target of the project. Now here we can actually start the live activity again in the main target. So we defined all the configuration in the widget target, in the widget extension. But for starting the live activity, we need to define it in our main target. And you can, as you can see, like define the values, which like related to that model that we defined. And you can ask the activity to start and show the live activity. And tada, we can have this live activity and the dynamic island. And once you are in the app and you swipe up in the iPhone 14 Pro series, you can see actually dynamic island is activated, and also the live activity in the home screen, you can see it immediately. So if you ask, since we don't have any network update in live activity, so how we are going to update it? So the first thing is that if the app is not terminated, so basically in the main target we have access to these API calls. We can get API, we can like run a scheduler and get the updated data and show it, but we don't have access to the API calls in that widget extension. This is one of the ways that we can manually actually update the live activity. But maybe you ask, okay, maybe the user terminate the app, and then how we can update it? So the solution for that is the notification. So Apple actually provided this push notification services here. So we can, like the normal notification we can send, there is a type in the notification that you can send to the user, to that device, which has a specific type for the live activities. And the device actually understands that. And if you send the proper model, you can actually update your live activity. And actually that is the point of having the live activity. So we can have the app not run in the foreground and get updated, So after you implement all of this, you maybe become a bit confused about like some of the things. The first thing is that it's not supported for iPad, and you implement all of these, and you become like, what? Why? There is no reason. Maybe we don't know, but Apple knows. But for me, there is no reason for not supporting live activities in iPad, because it's just a normal view, and they can show it in the lock screen. And why not? And second thing was that when I was implementing like my own project, like some images weren't like showing up at all, but some of them yes, and I had no idea why. And third thing is that if you have worked with a widget, you know that if you put a button on it, when you click it, it actually opens the app. So you cannot have any interaction thing without opening the app, which is the same case here for live activities. So you can see the updated data. You can have some buttons, but once you click it or tap on it, it opens the app. So in some cases, for me, it was like not really pleasant to see that. So again, you need to open the app again. And using custom fonts were a bit tricky for me, and some of the fonts was like working, but some of them not. And actually, for the second point, the images and the custom fonts custom fonts, it was maybe difficult at all because of the difficulty of the debug, because it's run out of the app. So when you are out of the app, you basically cannot have the breakpoints, or you cannot really have logs or something. So it was so difficult to debug the live activity. So of course there are some ways to debug it. You need to, for example, put some types of logs, which actually will be like logged in the device log, and you need to go to the console app and like search for it and see what is the problem. And for me, it was like very hard to debug it, and it's the same case for the widgets as well. And the best practices. So basically, as I mentioned, it's somehow similar to the notifications. So the user can see it in the lock screen. So it can be very annoying if you send the updated data any seconds, any minutes. So as a user, I'm the first one to disable the live activity, and I don't want to see it. So be careful about that, and send just the crucial data and update. For example, in this use case that we implemented together, just send the crucial data, like when the order status is changing, or when the deliveries arrived. These kind of things should be sent in live activities. And as I mentioned, the most essential content should be sent there. And offer the live activity for task and live event that have defined beginning and end. Again, like this case, since they are temporary in the system, so we need to have them temporarily defined. So we need to have a duration for that. Again, like the delivery case. And avoid displaying the sensitive information in live activity, which is like obvious why. And again, for displaying ads, of course, it's not a good idea to show ads. And if I'm even not mistaken, Apple will reject the app if you put like any ads in live activities, because it doesn't make sense. It's like you send some ads through the notification or something, which doesn't make sense to have. I mean, the context is different for the live activity. And give the people control over beginning and ending the live activities. And by this, actually, I meant that when the user, for example, orders something, again, through that case, ask the question, do you want to track your order, for example, or not? Maybe the user doesn't care about the status of its delivery or something. So we need to give this, ask this permission from the user for that. And yeah, thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Can the app have multiple live activity variants? How to choose a specific one through APNS? You want to read it?
So for the first question, that yes, like one app can has different live activities. And for the second part, how to choose a specific one through APNS. Who is the questioner? What do you mean?
Like, how do you choose which one to show?
To be honest, I haven't tried it, but I know that Apple actually gives you this option to define and show different live activities. And for update, I think your question is about the updating them, right? For the APNs or?
Yes, selecting the right variant through APNs.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know, I would say, because I didn't try it. But if someone here knows.
I think because you send the data push notification to the device that process it and then update the variant you choose on the device using the metadata you send.
Yeah, can be.
So we can move to another question from Pavel. It is possible to update view of live activity using provided data in the extension, something like cut down. If so, then how often it can be redrawn?
First of all, yes, again, it's possible. And how often it can be redrawn? I would say like the normal view in the Swift UI, if you use the Swift UI view, how often it gets updated is the same question. It's the same case. And since we are using the Swift UI, so it's the same life cycle for the views as well. And I need to mention that in the beginning, I thought that there might be some limitation for these kind of things like countdown or animations or something. But I was like so surprised, and by the the experience that I got from this views in the live activities and in the dynamic island as well. So it's like the normal views that we have in Swift UI.
Yeah. Next question is for our first presenter, Ra. It is guarded by any permission. Couldn't that be misused if not?
You mean that the user can disable it somehow or something?
I mean, the app can trigger a live island without asking user.
Oh, no. And actually, this is, you can ask for the permission first, and then the user can disable the live activities at all. So like the notification that we have, you can disable it.
And a specific app.
Exactly, for a specific app.
Yes, but by default it is disabled.
No, it's not disabled by default.
By default
it's enabled
okay.
unless the user, disable it.
Okay.